There we go. That's much better. Oh, the Kazakh, thanks for, it says new subscriber. Why is it not showing PolGab on there? The Kazakh says hello, good morning. SQL Pilot says hello. Hi, everybody. It's so funny. It looks like for some reason it's just not getting the PolGab URL up there. Let me see if I can refresh that. Let's see here. Properties. Maybe is there a way to reset that? Why is it not showing? Maybe shut down and refresh. Let's try that. There we go. Oh, perfect. Now it shows it. Renegade Larson is here. Hello, everyone. I have to confess, this is probably going to be, oh, SQL Pilot renewed as well. Thank you, SQL Pilot. Woo! Okay. I have to confess, this is probably going to be y'all's least favorite office hours ever. Not because it's planning to be short, not because it's not, and it's going to take whatever time that it takes, but I have a specific category of questions picked out. Usually I go through the top voted questions from top to bottom, but today I have a specific kind of question that I picked out. Let's see if you can pick out on the theme or pick up what the theme is. So first off, we have Tivan who says, hi Brent, I'm facing a deadlock in SQL Server with an order by descending on a primary key during a read, and it's conflicting with an insert on the same table. Is this related to descending scans? I couldn't find a clear explanation. Can you please share some thoughts? Thanks. Absolutely. When you're facing up against deadlocks, there are basically three ways that you can fix them. And I'm not going to get into the internals of your specific deadlock because I don't have the execution plans, right? If you want to hire me for a specific execution plan, that's consulting, but that's kind of different. So there are three ways that you can solve it. You can either solve it by changing the indexes, changing the queries, or changing settings on the server. It just so happens that I cover that information. I cover how to fix deadlocks with indexes in my Mastering Index Tuning class in the module on deadlocks there. If you can change the queries, then I teach you how to do that in my Mastering Query Tuning class in the deadlocks module there. And then if you can only change it with server level settings and database level settings, I teach you how to do that in the Mastering Server Tuning class. So depending on which one you're allowed to change, that would dictate which class that you take. Next up, let's see here. Next up we have, let me pop down a little bit further. ddev, who says, sometimes it happens that in a blocked process report, I can see a frame that I know cannot be in a stack trace. I know it's not called from that procedure. What does this mean? Is it a bug that I can fix? And he sends me a link to an image. As much as I would love to open images from strangers in the middle of office hours, I'm probably not going to do that. I wish I had $1 for every, and I do have $1 for every time, that someone has told me, oh, trust me, we couldn't possibly be calling that code. And then, of course, what do you know when we go in and start digging into it, that something is calling that code. And I'll give you the classic examples, triggers. That somebody has a trigger on a table and they didn't realize that the trigger would be called, or they have referential integrity set up, or they have a computed column that's based on a user-defined function. So what I'd say is, instead of thinking that you know something can't possibly happen, open up your mind to what if it is happening, and how would I go about fixing it and work on it from there. Next up, let's see here. Asking Too Much asks, occasionally when tempdb is hammered, spblitzwho gets an error with a lock request timeout. When would you be okay with setting a max lock timeout value to 15 seconds? I have no issue with blocking plans. The first thing that I would do is say, I want to find out why tempdb is getting hammered so badly. I need to take a drink there. I want to figure out why tempdb is getting hammered so badly. And the place that I would start is my fundamentals of tempdb class. In my Fundamentals of TempDB class, I give you the different things that consume TempDB performance and space, and then I teach you how to size it appropriately given those workloads. I also teach you how to fix those workloads by doing changes to query tuning, index tuning, and so forth. And it just so happens, let me switch something over a little here, it just so happens that those are on sale starting this Friday. Starting this Friday is my Black Friday sale. Every year I run a big long sale that goes through and does deep discounts on all kinds of my classes. And it's my way to give back to people who watch me all year long, read the blog posts, watch TikTok, watch me stream on Twitch, whatever. Because those of you who have a lot of time on your hands and you invest in yourselves in training, you can afford to wait until the stuff goes on sale. Whereas the big rich companies that I deal with all year long, I don't care if they pay full price. They can, totally guess or totally pay full price in order to get that expensive training. But for those of you like the Kazakh who specifically guessed it, what the theme of today's webcast is, that I want to kind of reward and give back to y'all and say, hey, here's a really cheap way to get into my classes. So if you go to brentozar.com now, you can go see the training classes and SQL Constant Care and Consultant Toolkit that are on sale all November long. So during November, biggest discounts that I have available all year. Check that out over at brentozar.com. Let's see here. We'll go back to the next question. Hi, David Rebo drops in chat there. Let's see here. Next up, we have Gary Numan. Gary says, when I'm tasked with fixing overall performance with cloud hardware, what are your pros and cons of increasing memory versus upgrading the disk SKUs? Which do you see more of? Well, first off, you want to focus on what is your SQL Server's top weight type. And then based on your top weight type, that determines which hardware you add. I teach you my the decision-making process behind those in my Mastering Server Tuning class. Mastering Server Tuning class over at brentozar.com. Teach you how to measure your server, what metrics to look at, what to do based on what your top weight types are, and I show you with hands-on examples. I give you demo scripts that you can run in your own environment so you can see what a top weight type looks like in action. And I teach you the different ways. Believe it or not, I actually show you what it looks like when you add memory, for example, to a server that's waiting on page IO latch. So that's in my Mastering Server Tuning class. Go check that out. Next up, Vahid asks, hi Brent, I've been learning SQL database administration for a year, mainly through tutorials. I feel like I lack hands-on experience. How proficient should I be in T-SQL for this role, and what's the best learning path to improve my administrative skills and problem solving? Man, if only there was someone who taught SQL Server and they had classes with hands-on labs, exercises that you could run. And wouldn't it be amazing if they had certificates of completion that were available as you finished each course? I wonder if on my own site there might be something like that. And I wonder if I would recommend it if there was. It's an interesting question. Next up, Call Me Ishmael asks, over a decade ago, I cornered you at a SQL Saturday in Washington, D.C., and I asked you about schemas. At that time, you were adamantly against it. Are you still against your use of schemas? It all comes down to a really simple question. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? People come up to me all the time, I got this hammer. What should I do with this hammer? Put the hammer down. Stop looking for things to nail or screw, and instead ask, what's the thing that I need to accomplish at work? What's the task that my users are complaining about? That dictates the tools that you use. All throughout all my training classes, I refer to SQL Server as like a carpenter's workbench where you've got all these different tools in front of you. And rather than grabbing a tool and saying, here's how you use the tool, what we do is we explain a problem and then we say, when you're facing this problem, here's the tool that you should reach for. Tell me what's the problem you're trying to solve with schemas. Well, I like my tables organized a certain way. Do you think that everyone in your company likes them organized the same way? Well, I like to set up security by schema. I guarantee you that your security does not line up evenly by schema because you've got some users who need to see some tables but not others inside the same schema. Real world just never works that way. Next up, let's see here. Jersey DBA asks, my company has a 3-node high availability cluster. The 3rd node is read-only for reporting. Well, why do we sometimes still see latency and blocking on the read-only node, even though we've got queries using the with nolock hint? Well, check out how to solve blocking issues. I teach you how to identify the queries involved with blocking and teach you how to fix them in my mastering index tuning class and my mastering query tuning class and my mastering server tuning class. Believe it or not, always-on availability groups can require locks on tables when the tables need to change. The most common example by far is when someone wants to do an alter table in production. Now that's probably not what's happening to you, but I just use it as an example because it is so crystal clear. Jessica says over in the Twitch chat, I didn't have a dev environment till the last hardware refresh. I'm sure in 10 years, no one will want to unplug my development desktop for fear of it breaking something. I'll tell you a true story. So I had a client about 2-3 months ago, and everybody was working in production. All the development was happening in production and all that. And then what, of course, did happen while we were doing a consulting engagement? Someone did a deployment that they weren't supposed to do. Somebody did a deployment over into production, thinking that they were doing testing over on their own machine. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have a separate development environment and then get your developers isolated over into there for security purposes. I'm not saying that no one should ever have permissions in production because of course I understand that it happens, but the faster that we can get dev environments. And you better believe that like the same day as we were going through that with that company where the dev did the accidental deployment, the poor developer was just absolutely terrified out of his life that he was going to lose his job. And I was like, no, you learned a valuable lesson. The person who should lose their job, and I said this on the call, I said the person who should lose their job in here is the person who didn't authorize a $1,000 development server because SQL Server Developer Edition is free. Quick show of hands in here. Who's the person responsible for buying that $1,000 development server? And the manager kind of was like, I didn't know it would only cost $1,000. I said, again, that's your fault. That's the reason why you're going to be fired. But of course they pay my check, so I continue to go on with that. KyleDevDBA asked a question that's not part of the ones that we were going to originally cover today because you see the theme of people who should go to training classes, but it's such a good question I wanted to get it out there. He says, hi Brent, what do you recommend when one DBA thinks another DBA isn't pulling their weight? Is there a certain thing that you look at or prove or disprove for this? So first off, Kyle, you said that you're a dev DBA, which makes me think that you're not the manager. I'm going to tell you a story from my own career. When I was in tech, and I'm not going to say what the job was because it would give away to people who watch this who knew me back then. When I was in tech, an employee on a team who was clearly not pulling their weight, and I knew they weren't related to anybody who owned the company. So I went into my boss's office one day and I said, I don't think this person over here is pulling their weight, and it's not that I want to get them fired, but I need them to do more work. They've got a big backlog of all kinds of stuff I need them to do. And my boss said to me, he said, here's the thing. We're giving that person a job because they have a terminal health issue. And I'm not going to say what it is because that would also give away anybody who worked with me at the time. They have a terminal health issue. When they had this health issue, they did not have any health insurance whatsoever. They had a horrible problem, didn't have any health insurance. So the owner knew their family through their church and said, we're just going to hire you and give you a job so that at least you can get your rent paid for. He said, we're not going to let that person go. That person's never going to be good at their job. It just kind of is what it is. They're dealing with their own terminal health issue. The work productivity at their company is the last thing on their minds. So you've heard the old adage that everybody's fighting their battle and you can't often see what their battle is from outside, but just remember that everybody's fighting their own battle, and maybe instead of looking at pointing the finger to say, why do you suck so bad? Maybe pat yourself on the back and go, I'm doing a great job. I'm doing better than my teammates are. And when you go to your manager to ask questions, say, is there anything that I could do to be better? Is there anything that I could do to stand out even more and doing a good job? But don't ever ask why the other person isn't pulling their weight, because I guarantee you your manager knows. Next up, CuriousDBA asks, hello Brent, I see you can use spblitz to output a table locally. Is there a way to store all that information centrally by running spblitz against a list of all servers so that I can create a report for critical issues across all of my servers? The first responder kit has so many cool parameters, so many cool tools that you can use. That's why I created my class, How I Use the First Responder Kit. It just so happens that that class, I'm going to switch over my little display here. That class is on sale during my Black Friday sales. If you go to BrentOzar.com, I've got all kinds of stuff on training classes, mentoring, and I'll tell you something, CuriousDBA just for you, that class is actually free. You don't even have to pay anything. All you have to do is get your lazy ass in class. Go. It's free. Go to BrentOzar.com. Click training. I got classes for people like you. You said you're curious. It's in your name. Go be curious. Go learn. Go to BrentOzar.com and click training. You don't even have to pay. Those of you who are watching this video, I give you days of my life every year. I teach you all this stuff for free. Go watch the classes. And when you're done with those, when you feel like you've nailed down the free stuff, get out your credit card and go buy a class. Learn something. You think you're going to find all the answers in ChatGPT? I got news for you. It hallucinates. So do you, but that's a separate side issue. Next up, let's see here. Tim asks a question. If SQL Server becomes overwhelmed with locking and blocking issues, is there a way to give the server a break and allow it to catch up? I wish that there was. I wish that there was a, pause incoming queries kind of thing that would let SQL Server drain through the rest of the existing queries that we're already processing, but there's not. There's not like a waiting line bouncer at the door. That's something that you have to implement with your own application. You have to implement something like showing a read-only page that temporarily the server's overwhelmed. If it's an issue that you can't even get in to run diagnostic queries, I teach you how to fix that in my Mastering Server Tuning class. Let's see here. Go down a little further. Oh, RacerX. RacerX asks, what's your opinion of NVMe Ultra Disks when you're stuck with low memory for a multi-terabyte database in Azure SQL VM? Generally speaking, changing the storage is your absolute last resort because it tends to be extremely expensive. It tends to lead to high availability and disaster recovery challenges as well. So rather than jumping to disk first, instead I would go check out my Mastering Server Tuning class, which teaches you what to do when you're facing storage bottlenecks, whether those storage bottlenecks are reads or might be writes as well. And then we'll do one more. Let's see here. Milind asks, hi Brent, will there be any differences in joins for columns with regular indexes versus a filter indexes? Yes, and I teach you that in my Mastering Index Tuning class. We have a whole module on filtered indexes, so you can check out my Mastering Index Tuning class, which... Did I mention that my classes are on sale during November for Black Friday? Did I mention? I can't remember if I plugged that yet or not. All November long, I run a Black Friday sale. And I do it all November long because a lot of you are working in companies that are cheap and they have slow-moving accounting teams. They don't want to process things very quickly. So you can go start hassling them now, and then they'll be able to pay for it by the end of November, because the sale shut off at the end of November. That gives your team time enough that they can FedEx in a check, they can get out the company card, whatever it is that they want to do. I don't take IOUs for payment. I don't take purchase orders. The only thing that I take is actual money, so in the form of credit cards or checks, whichever works for you. All right, so those of you who stuck around this long, you clearly get the theme of this particular office hours. I'm always amazed at people who work so hard trying to find a solution to a problem, and it never even occurs to them that, hey, if you're spending hours a day or days per week trying to solve something and you can't find the fix, go get a training class. It's the time in your career when you should invest in yourself. So give that a shot, and I will see y'all on the next office hours. Adios, y'all.